So I've made a bit of a mess. A few days ago I was out drinking with my classmates and I started talking with one of them, and he told me about this old RPG text-based kind of game that we both used to play in high school. And he told me that they have recently revamped it, so it's back up again because it kind of died out, but apparently it's up again. And he kind of put out this idea of building a bot for it, and initially I was a bit intrigued because I like to automate things. But in the end it kind of turned out to something completely different, and it really changed my perspective on how vulnerable your APIs actually are and how important it is to safeguard them and writing tests for them to make sure that the users can do what they're not supposed to do. So this has actually been quite a journey that I wanted to show you, so you also can kind of learn from this experience, so you don't have to have someone exploiting your API. Oh, and I also created a gold duplication glitch in the game.
So this is the actual application, and don't be scared if you're not from Sweden and you don't understand anything now. You don't need to understand anything of the text here, because that's not the essential part. The essential part is kinda how you manage to find these hidden APIs that are used in the actual game that are being called from the front end, and how you're able to use those. So for instance, this is kind of a fighting game, so we have a duel here. And we can see that we have a form, which we're kind of a tactic for the fighting, and it's like normal attacks, and here's like, do you want to forfeit at 20%? And the highest level we can fight is the same level as ours. So I've chosen to use Firefox because I found it to be very easy to modify the actual requests. So what we do to start is you open up the DevTools, and you can do it by pressing either on the, I don't know, actually I just pressed Ctrl-Shift-I on my keyboard. There's probably some other guide for it. But anyway, the essential part is here, you go to the network tab, and this is where you want to be filtering, and the same thing goes for Chrome if you're using Chrome or Safari or whatever. And if we press, here's pretty much getting queue for fighting, and if we press getting queue and we just leave it quickly, we can see now that we have a post request and we have a delete request for forfeiting the duel. And if we change edit and resend, we're gonna see, okay, so this is a post request, and this is the internal API which is being called. So here we have pretty much gathered the internal API that is being called from this front-end interface. And that's actually super powerful and also quite a bit scary that we're so easily able to access this. We're also able here to see the request level, and you might be able to spot something interesting. So we have in our body we have a tactic which we define here, so this is our second option. We have the percentage to forfeit, which is here. We have a max level, but we also have an hidden min level, which isn't set here. And here they have set it so the min level is the same as the max level. So what if we change it? Maybe we want to set the min level so we're able to fight people that are 4 level below us as well. Can we do that? I don't know, let's try. And oh, it worked. You see, so it's a super easy way to kind of find exploits in the API. And here we're in the queue now, so it says, yeah, you're in the queue since 12:10, and you're waiting to fight other gladiators. So just by checking a simple API endpoint, we've found a pretty easy exploit. So what other type of information are we able to access by just walking through the application and checking the network request? So if we go to the landing page, you can see that we get a bunch of requests that's being sent, and there are a few that are sticking out. So this auth request is a bit interesting, but I also kind of want to focus on this me request. And if we press edit and edit and resend, we can see that, yeah, okay, so the internal endpoint for fetching information about the currently signed in user is this thing, API users me. So I've written a bit of JavaScript to actually extract information that we're not able to see on the page, but we would be able by just sending it a pure GET request. So what information do they actually keep about us? So here I pretty much have a GET request that is being sent, and so this is just a basic GET request in which I have added credentials, and I don't care about if you see like cross-site request forgery tokens. All these things are going to be expired by the time you see it anyway. So it's pretty much only a simple GET request that is being sent with the help of node fetch, and then it's being sent to this internal API endpoint, which they themselves are not exposing, but we're able to gather and find by exploring the front end. So if we now run the application, we can see that we get a bunch of different information about our characters. We can see so many things. For instance, we can see that, yeah, so my actual ID, which is probably saved in the database, is this, even though my character ID, which you're exposing to everyone else, is this thing, 3095. And I can get all this information about my character and other characters as well by just finding this hidden API. So that's quite interesting. So this is not something you would see by checking in the UI, but by just querying that internal API, we're able to gather all this information, and that's super powerful and not something you should do if you don't have the authority to do so. I've talked with the actual admin and he doesn't mind me doing this. He actually kind of liked it because I'm reporting every bug and everything that I'm finding to him. So are we able to gather even more information? Well, I'll show you. So for instance, this is kind of the workshop where you say, okay, so we're making cloth gloves and it takes 4 out of 10 rounds. So it kind of gets added by whenever this thing sticks out, then you get like 15 more rounds, right? So if we open up our dev tools again, we can see that, yeah, okay, we've cleared it, and let's add a round and we can work on it. What happens? I didn't reset. Okay, we can see that, yeah, okay, so we're probably, this is the actual API that we're querying, and this is the item that we're working on. So 3814 and work. What are we passing? So in our request body, we're passing the time and the amount of time that we're gonna be working on. So if we go here, we can see that, yeah, I have it, and this things is the same because I've already implemented the kind of test before. And we can see that now, okay, so we have a put method, and let's send the body to time 10 and work on item. Can we do it? So if we save, we can see that, yeah, okay, the item has finished. So it has created. And if we check our UI, okay, it's gone. So you have no current things you're working on. We have created it by using this. But what happens if we send the request again? If we say no query result for model app models avatar craft item 138014. That's interesting. So this kind of tells me that this entire backend is built in Laravel. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm 99.9% sure that this application is built in Laravel, and this is probably not something that you want to expose, that you want your clients to be able to fetch. And because I'm not that good with Laravel, but I'm sure that you could probably do a lot of bad stuff if you're really good with Laravel, and you kind of get these kind of messages. Because now we're currently exposing, like, yeah, okay, so in the app there's a model which is called avatar craft item, right? That's a bit of further information that we're able to extract. Are we able to do something more? So this is the auction house of the game. Let's try to see if we can do something with it.
That is not cool.
So if we go here to create auction, we can say that, okay, this is the end time in 6 hours, 12, a day, 2 days, 3, 7. Here's the, do you want to allow buyout price? So maybe you want to say, yeah, I want a buyout price of 400 and a starting price of 1. And then here I can choose my items. Let's go for this Tigbixur, which is plus legs. And here we can press. Before we do, we're going to open up our dev tools to check out the actual query and what's happening. So if we press create auction, we can see that, okay, we have a post request that is being sent. And this is kind of what it's created. So it created to this internal API, it created a post request to the auctions with the ID. And in the body, we can see that it has an end time. It has a buyout price. It has a starting bid. And it has the item in our RD as well as the quantity. So that's interesting. So let's close this auction down because we have what we need. So what we can do is we can take all this information, and I've actually already kind of implemented. So this is kind of all I really need is kind of this thing 36172, which I have. And we can set the end time here because it's interesting, because here we can see that we have defined options, but we're free to set this end time whenever we themselves want, because we can see the request body and we can change the information that's being sent to the backend. So let's see if we can post an auction from here. So let's save it and run it, and 6543. So if we go into our auctions now and we check my auctions, we can see that, yeah, okay, so our auction is created. And if we check our inventory, we can see that, okay, we have cloth hands and cloth shoulders and cloth shoulders, no cloth legs anymore. So what happens if we, for instance, try to send this request again? Or maybe 2 more times. So let's try to run this query 2 more times. And we get 2 more IDs. That's interesting. So if we update now, we can see that we have 4 auctions of the same item that is being used by their backend. That's probably not good. So let's try to cancel it. So let's cancel the auction and let's see what happens. Are they all removed? 2 still remain. And if we check our inventory, apparently we have our legs here now. That probably isn't good, and this is only something that you're able to gather by querying the internal API, and this is probably what people will be trying to do with your application, and it's up to you, the developer, to make sure that these kind of things aren't able to happen, because this is a game pretty much, and I could do some major damage to the entire game. And I mean, it's 230 people online, so it's not the biggest game in the world, but it will still cause a lot of damage and harm to players who actually enjoy the game. But let's see how we can take this further. So if we go into my auctions and check them, we can see that, yeah, we can cancel them, but we have no way of bidding or buying them, which is good. So here, if we go back to the auction house and we can check equipment, and we can see that, yeah, okay, so this guy is also selling, he's selling, I don't know, cloth shoulders, I think. And we buy it. But we can see here that now in our UI, we have, you can bid and you can buy them straight up. Let's clear and try to buy it. And we can see that, oh, okay. So the internal API in this thing is the API auctions, the ID, and then the /buyout. That's interesting. Does it have any request body? And no? Okay, so the request body is entirely empty. That's interesting. I also kind of want you to note this moment, the current gold, this is the gold coins in the game. So we have 814 at the moment. Okay, so we know now that, for instance, that we have this buyout. So let's create a function for buying out the auction. I've already kind of did this before, which I'm just gonna say, okay, so I want to send a post request with the body of null to the ID that is being passed. And very conveniently, we have the IDs of the auctions that we created earlier. I'm just returning them so we can see them in the here in our client, not our client, but in Node, pretty much. So can we take this anything further? What happens if you try to sell an item which is in the auction? Because that's not something you should be able to do, right? Then I'm gonna say, okay, sell from my storage. Let's go into equipment and let's sell these legs which you have put up on the auction house. Sell them. And we can see, okay, yeah, you have sold your cloth pants for 1 silver coin. And we have 814 at the moment. What happened with our auctions now? So if we go into our auctions and we check my auctions, we can see, they're still up. That's weird. Can we cancel them? Let's cancel them. Okay, perfect. Oh wait, couldn't cancel it. That's kind of weird. Could you buy your own auctions maybe, now that the item doesn't exist anymore? Okay, let's try it out. So we know now that we have our ID that is being sent when we ran this command. We can see that, yeah, 6543, 6544, and 6545. What happens now if we run this? So let's run it and see what happens. Okay. Your auction has been sold for and completed for 400 silver coins. My coin is now 1215, so I got the 400 extra coins, and now my auctions are gone. Do you kind of understand how these things are able to happen by people finding the internal APIs and then kind of abusing it and putting it on its head? Because there are so many things here that are never supposed to be able to happen. For instance, you should probably never be able to create multiple auctions of the same item. You should probably not be able to cancel the auction, still have it up, sell that item, and especially not being able to buy the item yourself. So you can see that there are in so many levels, and you can see how hard it can be for a developer to ever think of a solution where a user creates the multiple auctions of the same item, he then cancels it and then sells it to a vendor and then buys his own auction, right? Because that's so far-fetched, but it's only you're only able to kind of gather this kind of information by having access to these internal APIs. I really think that is something you should think about, that you always have to lock down your APIs and always be aware that even if you're not having your API showing publicly, people are gonna be able to access it, and you really have to make sure that they can't see more than they're supposed to see.
So by the time this video goes live, the admin will have fixed all these issues and bugs, and I wanted to make it very clear that this is not a showcase or tutorial for showing you how to exploit this game or API. Rather, it's me showing you kind of the process that I went through and kind of the things that I realized along the way, that your APIs are very vulnerable and you are able to access these internal APIs quite easily by just looking at the request going in and out of from the front end. So the takeaway from this video is that I want you to think about your APIs as being publicly available even if they're not, because in the end they actually kind of are. And that means you really have to write proper tests for your API, as well as sanitizing the user input and making sure that the user has the authority to do whatever they're trying to do. And even in those cases, people are going to be trying to exploit it, and it's up to you as a developer to handle those situations. So you kind of have to prepare for the worst, and in that scenario you're guarded against any form of malicious attacks. So yeah, I guess that was kind of it, and thanks for watching and stay tuned.